Hello, and welcome to Cannabis Marketing Live, all puff, no fluff. I'm your host, Kendra Losi, and today we're talking about how to get the edge with your marketing in order to grow your brand. So, we all know that marketing and communications are an essential part of your business and helping you grow, and the strategy is just absolutely something you don't want to skip. So today we have marketing expert Amy Larson, who's the VP of Marketing and PR at Simplifya. And she is joining us to talk about marketing strategy and what you need in order to stand out and really reach your target audience. So, welcome, Amy. How are you doing today?
I'm well, Kendra. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm excited that you're here. I have been wanting to do this interview for a while, so it's
Oh,
great
you're
that you're
so
here.
kind. I've been looking forward to it as well. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So, before we get started, do you mind telling the audience a little bit about yourself and your background
Sure.
and how
Sure,
you
I'm
got into
happy to.
cannabis?
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, as Kendra mentioned, my name's Amy Larson. I am the VP of Marketing and PR at Simplifya. Simplifya is an operational and regulatory compliance software platform. We serve only the cannabis industry. I've been working in cannabis marketing and PR since Colorado's adult use market opened in 2014. I actually spent the majority of my career before shifting into cannabis, really in the tourism and hospitality industries, doing a lot of consumer stuff, food and beverage, restaurants, that kind of stuff. And when Colorado's adult use market opened, it became very clear that there was an opportunity here, and there was an opportunity to um, honestly to really serve this growing industry and to be part of the growing industry. So I was working at an integrated marketing agency at the time, and part of my responsibility, in addition to business development, was really to dig into the cannabis industry and understand it better, understand how we as an agency could better serve the industry. And the industry's grown at a rapid pace in the last 6 years, but back in 2015, 2016, it was a wholly different landscape. And one of the things that I like to tell people is because I'm all about being transparent and being authentic. And the fact of the matter is, I wasn't one of those advocates for cannabis when I was in college. I wasn't working to get it passed. Truthfully, it wasn't really even on my radar screen when Colorado passed medical. When we voted for adult use, I voted for it because I was of the kind of the opinion that if you want to use it, if it works for you, you should have the ability to do that. It wasn't until Colorado's adult use market opened up that I started educating myself and found out really, honestly, how much we had been lied to for so many years. Being part of the dare generation and the just say no, how much we were lied to about the benefits of cannabis, how useful it is, how the stigmas around it. And for me, that was kind of the turning point. That was this is a plant that can do so much good for so many people, and that was really what drove me to get into the industry. And so the marketing agency I was at, it was called Cone. I actually stood up and launched our cannabis division back in 2016. Led the development of that, and the deeper I got into the industry, the more passionate I became about it. And so 2 years ago, I had the opportunity to join Simplifya and really dedicate my time and my passion in the industry and continue to do what I can to help to break down the stigmas around the plant, and to help, honestly bring marketing strategy and branding strategy to other players in the industry to help kind of elevate that. I also I'm very, very involved with the National Cannabis Industry
Mm-hmm.
Association, and I serve as the chair of the Marketing and Advertising Committee this year. I've served on the committee for 4 years, so I'm thrilled to be able to um, lead this committee forward. And we're definitely a working committee. We have a lot of really incredible projects coming out this year. And I'm also a mentor with Canopy Boulder, which is a startup accelerator here in Boulder, working with ancillary service companies in the industry. So I have my hands in a lot of things, but I love the industry and I love marketing in the industry.
You have a very impressive background. First of all, thank you for being on the board. I know it's a lot of work and responsibility, but it's important work and responsibility. So thank you for
It,
doing that.
oh, well, thank you. I love it. It's a passion right now.
The other thing I wanted to say is if you are watching and you have any questions for Amy, please drop them in the comments and let us know also where you're watching from. I always think it's interesting because each state is so different when you look at what can and can't be done, especially from a marketing perspective. It's fascinating.
It is, and it's very challenging. It's really challenging for both consumer brands as well as B2B brands. Every time you can be in Google's good graces one day, and then next thing you know, your ads are shut down. Instagram will just randomly shut you down. And I mean, there are rules that you have to play by, but there's a lot of unwritten rules and a lot of bots that go crawling through that
There's so
you
many
just
unwritten
can't
rules.
almost fight.
I was just having a conversation about that this morning, like trying to explain the gray area of Facebook
Right.
ads for CBD. Like there's just so many gray areas and things that go unsaid that you have to figure out for yourself, that it's important to have people that know what they're doing. Um,
It It definitely is. And just on that point, everybody, as part of NCIA, one of our, big missions has always been, how do we get into Facebook? How do we get into Google? How do we get into, Instagram, and let them know, they have the technology to target demographically, to target geographically, to do that. But the fact of the matter is cannabis is still too niche of a market. While, we see the economic impact and value of the industry, it's just not as big as some of the other industries that they face. And a couple of years ago when I worked at the agency, we had one of our Google AdWords groups shut down for using the word CBD, and this was pre-farm bill, but
yeah.
it was just CBD on a landing page. And when we called to fight and be like, you know what, we're talking about a consultancy here, we're not selling product, it was just CBD, we know other people are running these ads. And Google's our AdWords rep's response was, well, tell us who they are and we'll go shut them down too. Like,
That's not how this
that's not
works.
what we wanted.
That is the opposite, actually, of what we wanted to get.
What we want to do.
It's so funny. It's infuriating, the number of
It is.
gray areas, and then you're like, but that person's running
But they're
ads.
doing it.
They're okay, but it also depends.
And they're doing something they shouldn't. Go shut them down.
Right, but I'm not going to be the one to tell you that.
No, no, we don't want to shut anything down.
No, because the more ads they get through, the better it is for all of us. And I think that's an
100%.
important thing. One of the things that I wanted to talk to you about, and this is something that I see a lot with clients and companies that I talk to, is the importance of knowing what your brand is about and what it stands for. It's
Right.
something that I think a lot of people have missed. No matter what your industry is, a lot of people have missed this in the past, especially clear in the past year. So, can you talk a little bit about the importance of really knowing what your brand is about and what it stands
Sure.
for?
Yeah, so knowing your brand is an incredibly valuable, tool and asset that you should have in your back pocket. Again, regardless of what industry you're in, but especially in the cannabis industry, because knowing what your brand is, it's not what your logo is, it's not your tagline, it's not what you're going to put on your packages. Your brand is really kind of the core of your company. It's the core of what you stand for. And in knowing, that who you are and what aligns with your core values and what aligns with um, it's your brand is almost sometimes hard to describe. It's not who your people are. It's not the products that you deliver. It's really your why, right? It's why people choose you. It's why you do what you do. And if you can come to an understanding of who your brand is, what your brand stands for, it really can lay the groundwork and help you develop a strategy that's going to be meaningful and impactful for your brand, but also for your consumers, for your customer, or excuse me, for your company and also your consumers. Um, and
Sorry. You're getting some fan love here in comments. Kira Reed, the fabulous Kira Reed, is saying if you don't know who you are, neither will your customers, which is absolutely true.
Absolutely true. And, there are great examples of this, in the cannabis industry. If you look at companies out of California, one of the companies I was really lucky to get to help launch many years ago is called Papa and Barkley. And they have focused their brand on being very wellness and whole health, and they use whole plant, and that carries through everything that they do. And it can really help you as a brand stand out in the marketing decisions that you make. I know years ago, Papa and Barkley was one of the first to really go outside of the traditional cannabis event space and get into, the wellness and fitness type expo shows. That was something they did. It was after I'd gotten the chance to work with them, but knowing that that was their target and that's what their brand stood for was very much, a smart marketing decision for them to make. If you're like Simplifya, it's, we're a compliance company. And for us, our brand, we always kind of described ourselves as the cool nerds. And when you're talking about compliance in the cannabis industry, it's a little bit of a, compliance is a necessary evil, and compliance is something that everyone has to deal with. But nobody really wants to talk about it. And nobody really wants to deal with it. And nobody really wants to, oh my God, compliance, scary. I don't want to think about auditing. I don't want to think about the not fun stuff. And so what we did was we really kind of came at it from a very tongue-in-cheek, approachable perspective. And we did, all of our messaging is becoming compliant AF, or sexy, smart compliance. We actually did, about 2 years ago, we did red hats that said, make compliance sexy again. And you would not believe the looks of hatred you would get from people walking up to you until they got close enough to read what that said. And then it was okay. And then it was, oh my God, okay, it's compliance. And now, that's where, we were able to say, compliance is a really serious thing. Compliance, we are the experts in compliance, but we also have to be able to make that message and that truth of your brand engaging and approachable and acceptable to the customers that you're trying to reach.
You've said so many important things in there. I want to break it down. Also, you're getting a lot of comments and love, especially for Papa and Barkley, because I am also a huge fan. I was just using it yesterday. First of all, proud parent says hi.
Oh, hi, Mom.
But I think what's really important, and Kira and Heidi and Lily touched on it in the comments as well, just to reinforce what you're saying, is the brand is not just the logo and the font that you use, right. It's all the things that it stands for. So it's the brand values. It's making sure your messaging is aligned. It's putting all those things in place. And we've all seen companies that fail at this. Yeah. And then to your comment about what you've been doing with Simplifya and companies like Papa and Barkley, they lead with their values first. Like, the best thing that I see bud tenders getting excited about when it comes to Papa Barkley is the story, right? The first person that told me about it, they were going on and on about the story of the brand. Not what the product could do for me first. It was the story of why they were recommending
Why Papa and Barkley.
And it's those things that are going to really help stand out and help these brands that are stuck in, that are increasingly in so much competition.
They are. And the other point that's important when it comes to a brand and your company is that brand has to be lived from the top of your company through every touch point all the way down. And honestly, I'll serve up MedMen as an example. I mean, look at their C-suite. They had an amazing brand, huge footprint. They were they were the darling of the industry for a long time. And then we found out what was being said behind the scenes and how people were acting and what was being said. That is really the antithesis of the cannabis industry, for one thing. But it also shows that how if you're not living your brand fully through your company, that there's a huge disconnect and your customers are going to see through it. One of the things that I say, and when I give presentations is, when you talk about your brand, you could have the most amazing product on the shelf. And I, as a dispensary owner, may really want to, have it on my shelves. And I love your product and it's, selling like gangbusters. But if your sales guy is a jerk and he's not on time and he doesn't fulfill his orders and he's disrespectful, guess what? I don't want to deal with you. And my dispensary, my shelf space is way too important to waste my time on a jerk. And that's where those brand core values have to be lived through your company.
I've even read reviews. Oh,
Oh,
do you hear that echo?
no.
Okay. If you guys are watching, can you let me know if you hear an echo? I'm not sure I'm going to solve that. But even like the security guard, if the security guard out in front, like it's every touch point anywhere that you can touch a brand. There's a really interesting story about that I heard. I haven't been able to find it, so it's more anecdotal. But McDonald's. So McDonald's was like, people were getting tired of seeing McDonald's trash, not like on the side of the road and everywhere. And so they were starting to, from brand studies, they were starting to associate McDonald's with litter and trash, essentially. And so what they did is they put on their packaging, please deposit in trash can, or, please recycle, please, whatever it is, please be responsible. And just by putting that little tag on their products and on the packaging for their food, people started changing the association of McDonald's litter to the responsibility of the person.
Like, and not the company.
Yeah, with just that little change. But that's something that you don't even think about, the level of what your brand touches, right? That's not a person. That's just a piece of it.
Right.
But I always think it's an interesting story because it's you never know what you're going to expect is where your brand is touching somebody.
Exactly. And it's where you least expect it. It's the part that, you've overlooked that could then be the piece that bites you in the butt. We did, there's a dispensary company here in Colorado called Seed & Smith. And we developed this beautiful packaging for them. And, it was gorgeous. And we got down to the point of the packaging where, we wanted to put the flower in these glass jars inside this gorgeous boxes. And they wanted to go with some other route that was cheaper, it was more affordable, all of those things. And we were kind of like, no, this is where your brand breaks down. When you've got, excellence and quality all the way through, and then the piece that people are going to hang on to is cheap plastic, that's a breakdown of what your brand is. And so, that integrity, again, to your point, has to carry through every touch point.
Absolutely. And Lily, just a plug for Lily over at Changemaker Creative, she specializes in sustainable packaging and finding the right packaging for the right brand. And it's really important. Like, those pieces are things that you cannot try and cut corners with.
And sustainability is going to be a huge conversation for the industry moving forward, especially around packaging.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So one of the things that, as we're looking at, okay, we know what our brand is and we know what our brand stands for, let's talk about the marketing strategy, because this is something that I know I hear a lot about. Oh, I don't need it. Oh, I don't want to spend the money. Oh, I don't need, like, what's that going to do for me?
Right.
Talk about the marketing strategy. Why is it important?
So when we start, if you have a strategy in place, you're going to wind up saving yourself so much money and a headache and time and stress in the long run. There's an old saying, and I always misquote it, so I'm not even going to say who said it, but it's an old advertising quote that says, I know I waste 50% of my advertising dollars, but I don't know which 50% it is. And having a strategy in place is something that can help make sure you minimize that waste. And so when you're putting a strategy in place, you always have to lay a foundation. You wouldn't build a house without a blueprint, right? You wouldn't go and start throwing up walls and doors and plumbing without having a blueprint to know where everything's going to go. Those foundational elements include knowing what your brand is, identifying what your objectives are. What are you trying to grow? Brand visibility? Are you trying to drive sales? Are you trying to, are you trying to drive traffic back to your website? Know what those objectives are, Make them measurable. Don't just say, I'm going to grow my website traffic. I'm going to grow my sales. Make it something that you can actually measure. Know what your budget is, and know who your customer is. Because if you don't know all of those things ahead of time, you're just taking a very shotgun approach to the industry, to your marketing, and to hitting customers. So if you know what your brand is, what your goals are, how much money you have to get there, and who your customers are and where you can reach them, then you can sit down and say, okay, now that I know I have my foundation, now I need to know, okay, I've got X amount of dollars. It's got to last me the next year. These are the customers that I want to hit. This is where I can reach them. These are the goals that I'm going to do, because there's a lot of shiny object syndrome in the cannabis industry. And there's a lot of, so-and-so down the street is doing this, that means I have to do this. Well, so-and-so down the street might have a wholly different brand than you are. They may have a different customer set. They may not be looking to grow brand visibility. So knowing what your objectives are and where your customers are,
I'm laughing because one of my clients was just asking about TikTok, and I was like, we can.
No, we can. You can, but are enough of your customers there? Can you get that algorithm down to you're hitting the right people? No. And that's what, there are that's one of the things as marketers that's most stressful, most challenging for us, is then communicating that up to the C-suite potentially, or any type of executives or board of directors who don't understand the value of what marketing is and what it can bring, and what the value of not doing your marketing can have. And so, I work very, very closely with our sales team, and I work with our chief revenue officer. So the strategies and the tactics that we put into place are designed to help drive demand and drive lead gen for our sales team. So being able to also speak to, knowing what your ROI is, knowing what your customer acquisition cost is, knowing all of those types of, of things to support your sales team, can help you pick out what tactics are actually going to return, have a return on your investment. Make sure that you're getting in front of the customers that you want to have a conversation with, and then make sure that messaging, once you get there, is engaging and it's approachable, and people are willing to do what you want, to commit to that call to action that you're putting in front of them. But if you just go out and say, okay, I've got to be all over Instagram, well, you probably do have to be all over Instagram, but what's the goal of being all over Instagram? Is it to create brand visibility, or is it to drive sales? And how are you driving sales on Instagram?
I always drive people crazy because, I always have the goals, and yet they have to ladder up, right? So your business goals, your marketing goals, and then your goals for your campaign, or each social media platform, right? Like, your goals for your blog are not going to be the same thing. And if you have separate goals, they're going to go sideways. They're not going to work together.
Right.
And it's just always so interesting to try and explain that, but the laddering up of them is something that's really interesting. And on a side note, Lily's just saying that 8 of the top 10 topicals in California are Papa and Barkley. And the other 2 are Mary's Medicinal.
Well, I love both of them. I love Mary's too, but I'm kind of a Papa and Barkley loyalist, even being in Colorado.
I was going to say, Mary's side story. When I was in Denver last, I drove out there. So I was out there for a couple of weeks, and I sprained my ankle the day I arrived. And I used it as an excuse to go to all the different dispensaries in Denver. I think I hit 5 to see what products. Did you need an excuse, Kendra? No, I didn't. But it gave me a very serious, pointed questions that I needed to ask, so I could stop limping and do fun stuff in Colorado. But yeah, I tried everything, and sadly, one of my favorites was a little local brand that I just found that I was like, this is my favorite, and I can't find it in Colorado. It's one I've never heard of, never seen since.
Oh, interesting. Well, maybe they need some branding help.
Seriously.
Sales help.
Seriously. But so one of the things that I think is really interesting when it comes to strategy and marketing, and you touched on it earlier with Instagram and being shut down, is let's talk about backup.
Sure.
Why is having a backup important, and how many things do you think need, like, what areas do you recommend are backed up?
So obviously your social media channels, your profiles, kind of have a backup of them so that you don't have to start from scratch. But when I kind of talk about having a backup plan, it's as much about not putting all of your eggs in one basket, um, and doing like some A/B testing, and not just assuming that because something you're trying, or something that someone else did successfully is also going to be successful for your brand. As we mentioned before, regulations are different state to state. You never quite know when someone is going, when Instagram's going to come in and pull your account down, um, or your ad's going to get pulled, and you also, it's also a good time to know what's going to resonate. And sometimes you go down a path of even just messaging, and you figure out that that's not quite it's not getting the results that you want. And not to speak to self-centeredly, but when I first started with Simplifya, I think we were all under the impression that, compliance is an important thing. And why would you not want to be compliant? Because it means your products are safe, and it means, your operation is safe, and it means people are going to trust you. Well, and this was just, this was 2019, you guys, this was 2 years ago, barely. And it came, and we were talking about making sure that you're not going to lose your license, make sure you protect your license. Well, the fact of the matter is, nobody was at that time scared of losing their license because there was no enforcement happening. And we figured out very quickly that even though we were talking about protecting your license and protecting this huge investment that you've put into this industry, and protecting consumers and creating this kind of culture of compliance, nobody cared. Kind of the fear-based messaging was not resonating. And so we took a step back and we completely revisited it and figured out, okay, we've got to make it approachable. We have to make it engaging. And I think both from a strategy perspective as well as from a messaging perspective, that's where that kind of A/B testing, that backup plan comes in. You may, as a consumer brand, even as an ancillary service brand, you may have this huge marketing strategy, media buy lined out, social media, programs, influencer outreach. And again, somebody can come in and shut it down. And here you have invested all of this time, all of this effort, and you've got nothing to fall back on. And now you're starting from scratch again. And all of the time and energy that you've lost is now just lost, rather than divvying it up into, smaller bite-sized pieces, test it, see what works. It's just like your Google AdWords campaigns. Some campaigns are going to perform better than others. Some, the one that you think might really, really work might get shut down, but at least you've got another one that, might be gaining traction, and then you build off of that. So having that backup plan, yes, back up your social media profiles. Yes, back up all of your contact lists, all of that kind of basic backup that you have to do, but also have a plan B, and probably a plan C and a plan D also, because it's cannabis.
It's really always interesting to see. Sorry. The echo sounds like it's back. I don't know.
And I keep seeing myself freeze a little bit, so I don't know if that's coming through, if that's just on my side.
Just once or twice, it's been fine.
Okay.
It didn't affect your audio. But what I was saying is that it's always interesting because there's different ways that you can test, and it's even, you can test using social media to see which posts get the most traction.
Right.
As a way to start testing campaigns. Personally, I have gone down the road of launching a campaign that we were so excited about and had it flop, and we had to pivot like that. And if we didn't have backup ideas ready to launch, to pull and swap, just even that was just messaging and visuals, and that was just needing to swap something out. And it was, strictly it was a good lesson in terms of, don't put all your eggs, like you said, don't put all your eggs in one basket when it comes to not just like the strategy and the launch of it, but like the messaging and the images. You know, we've seen a lot of examples of big companies doing it badly. Pepsi. Um,
Yes. Yeah.
that the
And you know, take some comfort in knowing that even these ad companies, these marketing agencies that are getting paid millions and millions of
so
dollars,
much money.
screw up sometimes too.
Yeah. And
And but I do think, you know, one thing that last summer, and the social justice movement that came out of last summer was, if nothing else, sorry, my brain, I lost the
it's all
word.
right.
It reinforced how important it is to test your message with multiple audiences, and B, make sure you're being authentic to your company and to the message that you're putting out there, because you will get called out on it.
And you should be.
And so, and you should. But don't sit back and think that just because you like it and it resonates with you means it's going to resonate with anybody else. So that's also where that testing and that, you know, that having that backup plan comes in. It's critical for survival these days.
It really is. And I know we're almost out of time and we didn't even get a chance to touch on what it's like to be a canna mom.
Oh. Um, it's, you know what, it's a really fun space to be in. I have teenagers. My son's 15, my daughter's 13. And I actually, my husband's a police officer. And so me working in the legal cannabis industry, we have very, very frank and honest conversations with our kids. And they know exactly what mom does. And we have truthful conversations about what cannabis is and how it can help people, and how, you know, and also the damaging effects it can have on growing brains. And so, you know, we have very honest, open conversations with our kids. But I think one of the most, I guess, exciting challenges for me is, and it kind of sounds, I don't know. I, as a white suburban soccer mom, having the conversation about cannabis with my kids' friends' moms, and how it's okay to use it, and this is what you should try instead of, you know, half a bottle of wine, and this can help you sleep rather than your Ambien, and being able to start to destigmatize the plant, and cannabis as a medicine, and cannabis as, you know, for wellness, and cannabis as for whatever you want to use it for, um, is what I get really passionate about. And helping to break down that stigma, I think, is the only way we're going to continue to move this conversation and move legalization forward.
Totally agree. Totally and completely agree. Okay. Before we go,
Yes.
there's a quick speed round here. Okay.
Okay.
Are you ready? So there's
Probably.
there's 3 questions.
Okay.
So question number 1. What is your favorite cannabis product? Your go-to?
Oh, okay. For topicals, Papa and Barkley's 3-to-1 THC to CBD balm is amazing.
Yep.
Microdose, I love Kiva's Petramints. And you notice I'm saying a lot of California brands. I also love, huh?
I was gonna ask.
Yeah. Well, I also have a sister in the industry in California, so I have a connection. But, you know, and I also, I love 1906. I love their edible products here in Colorado, and I also love Ripples, their dissolvable THC. Oh, last one is Kikoko's teas are amazing for sleep at night. They're really good.
I just remembered when you said that I have one more left. I'm like, oh. Yeah, I liked Ripple. I picked that up when I was in Denver.
Yep.
That was one of the things that I tried. Okay, second speed round question.
Yes.
I was, for those of you guys that before the show, I was talking to Amy and I was telling her that I was going to ask her which was her favorite kid as the question, but I will not. Do you have what is your biggest marketing tip that you give to cannabis companies?
My biggest tip, and it's not just as it relates to marketing. It's really for anybody who wants to get into the industry. as a whole, and that is you have to get involved. You have to get involved. You have to network. You have to show, prove to the industry that you're not just in it to make a buck. You have to have passion for the plant. And there has to be effort put forth. You can't just go in, hang up a shingle and be like, I'm going to be a marketing agency for the cannabis industry. If you don't know the consumers, if you don't know the product, if you've never tried the plant, I don't know. I am not one of those people who says you have to be an avid, smoke every day cannabis consumer, but you do have to understand it, and you do have to be an advocate for it. And I think you have to have a passion for legalization and the industry. But getting involved and networking and advocating, those are my 3 top tips for anyone who wants to get involved in the industry.
No, I think those are really good, because if you're not trying it or consuming it or understanding the value of what it can bring for people, you're missing that whole piece of what makes it so important.
And even adult use brands, so many people like, oh, I just, we'll be in adult use, we'll be in a recreational brand. But so many people come to cannabis for health and health and wellness reasons, but they don't go through the process of getting a medical card. So making sure your product is approachable and something that people are familiar with sometimes is beneficial as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. And the last question is, how can people reach you? I'm going to put your information below.
You've got it up there. Instagram and Twitter, I'm at Amy Larson _CO. Facebook and LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn a lot. You can find me at Amy N. Larson. And I love to connect, and I love to have conversations with people. So please feel free to reach out.
Thank you. And thank you so much for being here, Amy. I really appreciate it. I could talk to you for another 2 hours easily. Let's keep talking marketing.
I think I just froze.
Nope, you're good. But we have to get going. Thank you all for watching, and drop any questions or comments in the chat and tag Amy or I, and we will jump in and answer those for you as well. So thank you very much. Thank you, Amy, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Kendra. It was so wonderful to chat with you. Thank you.